I always said I'd never be the chump who missed the signs. Yet there I was, staring at a driver's seat notched up like a booster for an Oompa Loompa and smelling cheap perfume on my steering wheel. My name is Preston Hayes, and I'm a 42-year-old IT manager who's obsessive about exactly three things: my job, my boxing workouts, and my car. The car, a pristine 2021 Honda Accord, sits in our suburban Chicago driveway like a shrine to my anal retentive personality. Every setting memorized, every surface spotless, every electronic feature configured to my exact preferences. So when I climbed into the driver's seat that Tuesday morning and found it adjusted for someone a full 6 inches shorter than my 6-foot frame, my blood pressure spiked like a server crash alert. "What the hell?" I muttered, running my hands over the leather that reeked of Victoria's Secret knockoff perfume. Corinne, my wife of 8 years, drove her own Toyota Camry. She had no reason to touch my car, let alone adjust everything to accommodate her 5'4" frame. My fingers found the Dashcam controls with muscle memory. I'd installed the front and rear cameras 6 months ago after our neighbor's car got keyed. The device stored footage on a cloud server, accessible through my phone app. Technology was my comfort zone, my safe space where logic ruled and emotions stayed locked away. The app loaded, displaying a grid of thumbnail videos from the past week. I scrolled backward, checking timestamps, looking for any footage of Corinne near my car. Tuesday morning, Monday evening, Sunday afternoon, nothing unusual. Then I found Saturday, 2:47 p.m. The video showed my car pulling into our driveway, but I wasn't driving. Through the windshield, I could see Corinne behind the wheel, her blonde hair pulled back in the messy bun she wore on weekends. But as the car stopped and the driver's door opened, a man emerged from the passenger side. I recognized him immediately. Evan Martinez, Corinne's direct supervisor at the corporate compliance firm where she'd worked for the past 2 years. Mid-40s, expensive suit even on weekends, the kind of guy who probably ironed his underwear. I'd met him at company Christmas parties, where he'd given me the limp handshake and dead-eyed smile of someone who considered me beneath his notice. My hands shook as I watched Corinne and Evan walk toward our front door, his hand resting on the small of her back in a gesture that screamed intimacy. The timestamp showed I'd been at my boxing gym that afternoon, sweating through my weekly training session with Frank, completely oblivious to the betrayal unfolding in my own driveway. I fast-forwarded through more footage. Friday evening, same scenario. Thursday afternoon, same routine. The pattern stretched back weeks, maybe months. Every time I was out of the house, Corinne was bringing Evan home, using my car like some kind of cheater's taxi service. The GPS feature on my dashcam tracked every journey. I pulled up the location data, watching red dots appear on a map of suburban Chicago. Most were familiar: grocery stores, gas stations, Corinne's office. But one location appeared repeatedly, always on the same days Evan rode in my passenger seat. The Sunset Motel, a rundown establishment on the outskirts of Chicago, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions about fake names on credit cards. My phone buzzed with a text from Corinne. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." Love you. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. I called my cousin Derek, a divorce attorney who specialized in high-conflict cases. He answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who'd heard every variation of marital disaster. "Preston? What's wrong? You sound like someone died." "Worse," I said, starting my car and pulling out of our driveway. "I need legal advice, and I need it now. Can you stay on the phone while I drive somewhere?" "Of course. What's going on?" I explained the situation as I navigated through afternoon traffic toward the Sunset Motel. Derek listened without interruption, occasionally making notes I could hear him scribbling on paper. "You're doing everything right," he said when I finished. "Document everything. Don't confront them alone. And whatever you do, don't let emotion drive your decisions. Evidence wins divorce cases, not righteous anger." The Sunset Motel squatted beside a truck stop like a guilty secret. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, parking lot full of potholes that could swallow a small car. I parked across the street behind a dumpster, positioning my car for a clear view of the motel entrance. At 6:23 p.m., Corinne's Toyota pulled into the parking lot. Evan's BMW followed 30 seconds later, parking 3 spots away in what I assumed was their standard operational security protocol. They met between the cars, Evan's hand immediately finding Corinne's waist as they walked toward room 237. "They're here," I whispered into my phone. "Are you recording this?" Video and audio. My phone's getting everything. I watched Corinne produce a key card from her purse. They'd been here so often she had her own key. The casual familiarity of their movements suggested this wasn't just an affair, it was a relationship, complete with established routines and intimate knowledge of each other's preferences. They disappeared into the room. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, fighting the urge to march across the street and kick down their door. Derek's voice kept me grounded, reminding me that patience and planning would serve me better than emotional outbursts. At 6:47 p.m., I made my move. I walked across the street and approached room 237, my phone recording everything. The thin walls of the cheap motel made privacy impossible. I could hear voices inside, Corinne's laugh mixing with Evan's deeper tone, the sound of a bed creaking, the unmistakable sounds of betrayal. I knocked on the door. The voices stopped immediately. Footsteps approached the door, and I heard Corinne's voice, muffled but clear. "Evan, stay quiet. Don't move." "Corinne, it's Preston. Open the door." Silence stretched for 30 seconds. I could picture them inside, frozen in panic, probably scrambling for clothes and trying to figure out how their perfect secret had been exposed. "Preston?" Corinne's voice cracked like thin ice. "What are you doing here?" "I think that's obvious. We need to talk. All three of us." More silence. Then whispered conversation I couldn't quite make out, followed by the sound of a chain being removed from the door. Corinne opened the door, wearing a hotel bathrobe that barely covered her thighs. Her hair was disheveled, her lipstick smeared, her face flushed with the unmistakable glow of recent intimacy. Behind her, Evan sat on the edge of the bed in his boxer shorts and undershirt, looking like a man who just realized his parachute had failed to open. "How did you find us?" Corinne asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I held up my phone, still recording. "Technology, sweetheart. The same Dashcam and GPS system you've been ignoring for months. Every trip to this place, every time you borrowed my car to transport your boyfriend, every lie you told about working late, it's all documented." Evan stood up, his corporate executive persona crumbling under pressure. "Look, Preston, this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I interrupted, my voice carrying the cold sarcasm that had made me legendary among my IT team. "Because it looks like my wife is cheating on me with her boss in a motel room that she apparently visits so often she has her own keycard. Please enlighten me about what I'm missing." Corinne stepped forward, her hand reaching toward me in a gesture I'd once found comforting. Now it made my skin crawl. "Preston, please, let me explain. This just happened. It's not serious. It doesn't mean anything." 6 weeks, I said, consulting my phone. "According to my GPS logs, you've been here 14 times in the past 6 weeks. Always on days when I was at the gym or working late. Always using my car because you thought I was too stupid to notice. Tell me more about how this just happened." A car door slammed in the parking lot behind me. I turned to see a woman approaching, her face twisted with the kind of rage that makes rational people cross the street. She was tall, elegant, with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to getting her way. She wore a business suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Evan Martinez," she called out in a voice that could cut steel. "You worthless piece of garbage." Evan's face went white. "Lydia, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" The woman, clearly Evan's wife, laughed with zero humor. "I'm here because a very helpful anonymous caller provided me with GPS coordinates, video footage, and a detailed timeline of my husband's extracurricular activities. The same helpful caller who suggested I might want to witness this touching reunion." I looked at Derek's number on my phone screen, still connected. My cousin had been busy while I was confronting the cheaters. Lydia Martinez pushed past me into the motel room, her eyes taking in the rumpled bed, the scattered clothes, the guilty faces of two people caught in the act. 14 visits in 6 weeks, Evan? You've been busy." "Lydia, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been embezzling from our joint accounts to pay for motel rooms. How you've been lying to my face for months while sleeping with this suburban housewife. How you've been using company resources to conduct your sordid little affair." Corinne's face flushed red. "Suburban housewife? Who the hell do you think you are?" "I'm the woman whose husband you've been screwing," Lydia snapped. "And unlike you, I don't make excuses for my mistakes. I fix them." The parking lot had become a stage, and we were the unwilling actors in a drama that would be gossip gold for months. Other motel guests had emerged from their rooms, drawn by the raised voices and obvious conflict. Someone was definitely recording this on their phone. Evan tried to assert control, stepping between his wife and his mistress like a referee in a boxing match. "Everyone needs to calm down. We're adults here. We can handle this rationally." "Rationally?" I laughed, the sound carrying more bitterness than humor. "You want rational? Here's rational. My marriage is over. Your marriage is over. Your career is probably over once HR gets the detailed report I'm planning to file. And your reputation in this community is definitely over once this video hits social media." "You can't post that video," Corinne said, panic creeping into her voice. "There are privacy laws. In a public parking lot? During a confrontation you chose to have? Derek, you still there? I addressed my phone. Still here, Derek's voice emerged from the speaker. And for the record, everything Preston just said is legally accurate. No expectation of privacy in a public space, especially when the subjects of the recording initiated the encounter. Lydia smiled for the first time since arriving. I like your lawyer. Evan, you should call yours. You're going to need him. The confrontation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Corinne kept trying to minimize the affair, calling it a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment, a meaningless physical attraction. Evan attempted to blame work stress and marital problems, painting himself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of betrayal. But Lydia's presence had changed the dynamic completely. She wasn't just another wronged spouse seeking explanation or closure. She was a woman with resources, connections, and the kind of cold fury that makes enemies out of former allies. Preston, she said, turning her attention to me. I assume you'll be filing for divorce? Absolutely. Good. I suggest we coordinate our legal strategies. Evan has been very careless with financial records lately. I think you'll find the discovery process quite enlightening. Corinne's eyes widened as she realized the implications. What does that mean? It means, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me, that your boyfriend has been funding this affair with money that belongs to his wife. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts, all traceable, all documented, all evidence of marital misconduct that will factor into divorce settlements. You're not the first, honey, Lydia added, her voice dripping with false sympathy. You're just the latest, and probably the last, considering Evan's about to lose everything he owns. The crowd in the parking lot had grown. Someone had called the police, and I could see flashing lights approaching in the distance. Time to leave. Corinne, I said, my voice carrying the finality of a closing door. Don't come home tonight, or any night. Your clothes will be packed and waiting on the front porch tomorrow morning. Everything else we'll handle through lawyers. I turned and walked toward my car, leaving behind 8 years of marriage and the woman I'd thought I knew. Behind me, the argument continued, voices rising and falling like a dysfunctional symphony. Derek was still on the phone when I started the engine. How do you feel? Like I just woke up from a very long nightmare, I said. What happens now? Now we destroy them, legally, methodically, and completely. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for what I knew would be the last time as a married man. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if removing Corinne's presence had eliminated a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I'd spent the previous evening methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of GPS data, copies of dashcam footage, credit card statements showing charges at the Sunset Motel, phone records revealing hundreds of text messages between Corinne and Evan during work hours. Derek had been right about evidence-winning divorce cases. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Mrs. K, a 70-year-old retired teacher who knew everyone's business within a 3-block radius. Saw the news trucks outside. Everything okay? News trucks. I looked out my front window to see a Channel 7 van parked across the street, a reporter checking her makeup in a compact mirror while a cameraman adjusted his equipment. Apparently last night's motel confrontation had made the local news. I called Derek. Please tell me you didn't tip off the media. I didn't tip off the media, he said, but someone at that motel did. The story's already online. Suburban love triangle explodes at Southside Motel. You're famous, cousin. Wonderful. What about the corporate angle? I've drafted a comprehensive report for Evan's HR department. Intimate harassment, misuse of company resources, violation of workplace ethics policies, the whole package. It'll be delivered this morning by certified mail. I made coffee and checked the news story on my laptop. The reporter had interviewed several witnesses, including a truck driver who'd recorded part of the confrontation on his phone. The video showed Corinne and Evan looking guilty and disheveled, Lydia's righteous fury, and me walking away with what the reporter described as calm determination. The comments section was brutal. Suburban Chicago might be a big area, but it was still small enough for gossip to travel at light speed. People I'd never met were taking sides, analyzing relationship dynamics, and speculating about financial consequences. My work phone rang. Janet, my boss at the IT consulting firm where I'd worked for 12 years. Preston, I just saw the news. Are you okay? I'm fine, Janet. Better than fine, actually. Do you need time off? Personal leave? No, I need work. Normal routine. Normal problems I can solve with logic and skill. The chaos at home is handled. If you're sure. Oh, and Preston, that report you sent about potential security vulnerabilities in our client database? Brilliant work. We're implementing all your recommendations. After hanging up, I realized that losing my marriage might actually improve my career. No more late-night arguments about working too much. No more guilt about prioritizing professional excellence over romantic dinners. Just clean, logical problem-solving in an environment where competence was rewarded. At 10:30 a.m., my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw two people I recognized from Corinne's social circle, Mike and Jennifer Chen, a couple we'd socialized with for years. They were holding a casserole dish and wearing the uncomfortable expressions of people forced to choose sides in a messy divorce. I opened the door. "Mike, Jennifer, this is unexpected." "We brought you lunch," Jennifer said, holding up the casserole. "Figured you might not be cooking much right now." "That's thoughtful. Come in." They followed me into the kitchen, their eyes scanning for evidence of domestic upheaval. The house was spotless, organized, functioning perfectly without Corinne's presence. "So," Mike said, settling into a chair at my kitchen table. "We heard about last night. Rough situation." "Rough for some people," I said, pouring coffee for my guests. "Liberating for others." Jennifer leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Preston, we need to talk to you about something. About Corinne and the situation." "What about it?" Mike and Jennifer exchanged glances, the kind of wordless communication that happens between couples who've been together for years. Finally, Mike spoke. "We've known about the affair for months." The coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. "Excuse me?" "Corinne told Jennifer back in February," Mike continued. "She swore her to secrecy, said it was just a temporary thing, that she was planning to end it. And you said nothing." My voice was flat, emotionless, the tone I used when dealing with catastrophic system failures at work. "We didn't know what to do," Jennifer said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It wasn't our place to interfere in your marriage. We hoped she'd come to her senses and tell you herself." I set down the coffee mug with deliberate precision. "You've known for 4 months that my wife was cheating on me, and you said nothing. You came to dinner parties at this house, you socialized with us as couples, you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was normal. Preston, please understand." "I understand perfectly." I stood up, my movement causing both of them to lean back in their chairs. "You made a choice. You chose to protect Corinne's secret instead of protecting our friendship. You chose to let me live in ignorance while everyone else knew the truth." "It wasn't like that," Mike protested. "We were trying to protect you." "Protect me? By letting me continue investing in a marriage that was already over? By allowing me to make financial decisions based on false assumptions about my future? By watching me plan a life with someone who was planning to leave me?" The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the news van starting its engine outside. "We thought we were doing the right thing," Jennifer said quietly. "No, you thought you were doing the easy thing. The right thing would have been telling me the truth. The right thing would have been giving me the information I needed to make informed decisions about my own life." Mike stood up, his face flushing red. "Look, Preston, I know you're angry, but don't take this out on us. We're not the ones who cheated on you. No, but you're the ones who helped cover it up. You're the ones who made me look like a fool in front of everyone who knew the truth. You're the ones who violated our friendship by keeping secrets that affected my life." "We were trying to be good friends to both of you," Jennifer said. "Then you failed spectacularly." I walked to the front door and opened it. "I think you should leave now." They followed me, their casserole forgotten on the kitchen counter. At the door, Jennifer turned back. "Preston, we hope you can forgive us someday. We really were trying to help." "Help?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to help? Here's how you can help. When people ask you about this situation, tell them the truth. Tell them you knew about the affair for months and chose to say nothing. Tell them you valued Corinne's comfort over my right to know what was happening in my own marriage. Tell them you're the kind of friends who keep secrets that destroy lives." I closed the door and watched through the window as they walked to their car. Mike was gesturing angrily, probably arguing about whether they should have come at all. Jennifer was crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Lydia Martinez. We should meet. I have information you'll want to hear." I typed back, "When and where?" "Frank's boxing gym, 7 p.m. Come alone." Frank's boxing gym occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town, where the smell of sweat and leather mixed with the sound of gloves hitting heavy bags in rhythmic percussion. I'd been training there for 5 years, drawn by the honest brutality of the sport and Frank's no-nonsense approach to both boxing and life. Frank himself was a former heavyweight contender who'd opened the gym after a career-ending injury in his early 30s. Now 58, he moved with the careful grace of someone whose body had absorbed decades of punishment, but whose mind remained sharp as a blade. "Preston," he called out as I entered the gym. Heard you had some excitement last night. News travels fast. Faster when it involves cheating wives and public confrontations. You okay? Better than okay. I'm free. Frank nodded approvingly. Marriage is like boxing. When your opponent keeps hitting you below the belt, it's time to find a new opponent. Lydia Martinez arrived at exactly 7 p.m., wearing jeans and a Northwestern University sweatshirt that made her look 10 years younger than the corporate executive I'd met at the motel. She moved through the gym like someone comfortable in any environment, nodding politely to the boxers who stopped to stare. Mrs. Martinez, I said, approaching her near the heavy bags. Lydia, and thank you for meeting me here. I wanted somewhere private but public, if that makes sense. Perfect sense. What information do you have? She pulled out a tablet and opened a file folder. Evan's financial records for the past year. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything I could access before he thought to change the passwords. I scrolled through the documents, my IT background making the patterns obvious. Regular withdrawals in cash, charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, payments to jewelry stores and lingerie boutiques. He's been funding this affair for almost a year, I said. Longer. This is just what I could document easily. But here's the interesting part. She swiped to a different screen. Look at the dates of the larger expenditures. I studied the timeline, cross-referencing it with my own mental calendar. These correspond to times when Corinne said she was working late or attending work conferences. Exactly. Your wife and my husband have been planning this affair like a military operation. Hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, even a weekend trip to Milwaukee that they disguised as separate business travel. The scope of the deception was staggering. This wasn't a spontaneous affair born of workplace attraction. It was a calculated betrayal that required extensive planning, coordination, and financial investment. There's more, Lydia continued. Evan's been embezzling from our joint investment accounts to fund his activities. Small amounts, but consistent. He probably thought I wouldn't notice. But you did notice. I notice everything. It's why I'm successful in business and why I'm going to destroy him in divorce court. Frank approached us, carrying 3 bottles of water and wearing the expression of someone who'd overheard enough to understand the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, might I suggest you take this conversation to my office? Too many ears out here, and some of them belong to people who sell information to gossip blogs. Frank's office was a cramped space behind the gym's main floor, decorated with boxing memorabilia and photos of fighters he'd trained. We sat around a small table while Lydia spread out more documents. Here's what I propose, she said. We coordinate our divorce proceedings to maximize damage to both Evan and Corinne. Shared legal costs, coordinated discovery requests, joint strategy sessions. What's the end game? I asked. Complete financial and social destruction. Evan loses his job, his reputation, his assets, and his access to our children. Corinne loses her marriage, her financial security, and her standing in the community. That sounds like revenge, not justice. Lydia's smile was sharp as broken glass. Sometimes they're the same thing. Frank leaned back in his chair, studying both of us with the analytical gaze of someone who'd seen every type of human conflict. You two are talking about going to war. You sure you're ready for that? I'm ready, Lydia said without hesitation. I thought about Mike and Jennifer's betrayal, about the months of lies and deception, about the casual way Corinne had dismissed our marriage as not serious and meaningless, about the humiliation of being the last to know about my own life. I'm ready too. Then here's some free advice from an old fighter, Frank said. In boxing, the most dangerous opponent is the one who's got nothing left to lose. Right now, that's both of you. Use that advantage, but don't let it make you stupid. Smart revenge lasts longer than emotional revenge. Lydia pulled out her phone and opened a voice recording app. Let's start planning. For the next 2 hours, we outlined a strategy that would have impressed military tacticians. Lydia had access to Evan's professional network and financial records. I had technical skills and documentation of the affair. Together, we could attack from multiple angles simultaneously. First phase, Lydia said, is employment termination. The HR complaint you're filing will trigger an investigation, but I can provide additional evidence of financial misconduct. Second phase, I added, is social destruction. The video from last night is already circulating, but we can amplify it through strategic sharing on social media platforms. Third phase is financial devastation. Divorce proceedings designed to leave them with minimal assets and maximum debt. Frank whistled low. You two are scary when you work together. We haven't even gotten to the creative parts yet, Lydia said. My phone buzzed with a text from Corinne. Preston, please call me. We need to talk about this rationally. I showed the message to Lydia, who laughed out loud. Rationally, she repeated. That's rich. Evan sent me the same type of message this afternoon. They're panicking. Good, I said, deleting the text without responding. Panic leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to more evidence. Speaking of evidence, Lydia said, I have something else you'll want to see. She opened a new file on her tablet, revealing what appeared to be email correspondence between Evan and Corinne. I accessed Evan's email account this morning before he changed his passwords. Months of communication, including some very explicit photos and detailed plans for leaving their respective spouses. The emails painted a picture of two people who viewed their spouses as obstacles to overcome rather than human beings deserving of honesty. They discussed financial strategies for maximizing their post-divorce assets, social strategies for minimizing reputational damage, and personal strategies for maintaining their affair while avoiding detection. They've been planning to leave us for months, I said, scrolling through message after message of calculated betrayal. Planning to leave us with nothing? Lydia corrected. Look at this email from 3 weeks ago. The message detailed Evan's plan to transfer assets to hidden accounts before filing for divorce, while Corinne's response outlined her strategy for claiming spousal support based on fabricated claims of emotional abuse. They're not just cheaters, I said. They're con artists. We're con artists, Lydia corrected. Now they're about to become cautionary tales. Frank stood up and walked to his office window, which overlooked the main gym floor where late-evening boxers were finishing their workouts. You know, he said, I've been training fighters for 20 years. The ones who last aren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who can take a hit and keep thinking clearly, the ones who can turn getting knocked down into an advantage. He turned back to us. That's what you two are doing. You got knocked down, but you're getting back up smarter and stronger. Your opponents think they've already won the fight, but the fight's just starting. Lydia packed up her documents and stood to leave. Phase 1 begins tomorrow morning. Evan will be called into HR by 10 a.m. By noon, he'll be cleaning out his office. And Corinne? Corinne will discover that her joint credit cards have been canceled and her access to your shared accounts has been suspended. All perfectly legal, according to your cousin Derek. I walked Lydia to her car, the cool evening air carrying the sounds of the city settling into night. Preston, she said before getting into her BMW, I want you to know that this isn't just about revenge for me. It's about justice. They chose to destroy our lives for their own selfish gratification. They chose to lie, cheat, and steal rather than have honest conversations about their unhappiness. They chose to treat us like fools. And now we're choosing to show them the consequences of those choices. Exactly. Sweet dreams, Preston. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. 3 weeks later, I stood in the parking lot of the Sunset Motel, watching as a demolition crew prepared to tear down the building that had housed so much betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. The physical location of Corinne and Evan's affair was being erased just as their lives were being systematically dismantled. The past 21 days had been a masterclass in coordinated destruction. Lydia and I had executed our plan with the precision of Swiss clockwork, each phase building on the last until our targets were completely overwhelmed. Phase 1 had exceeded all expectations. Evan's termination from his corporate position had been swift and public, accompanied by a press release citing violations of company ethics policies and financial misconduct. The HR investigation had uncovered not just the affair, but also Evan's misuse of company credit cards for personal expenses and his harassment of female subordinates beyond Corinne. Corinne's termination had followed 48 hours later, her own company citing inappropriate workplace relationships and violations of professional conduct standards. The corporate world was smaller than most people realized, and word of their affair had spread through professional networks like wildfire. Phase 2 had been even more devastating. The video from our motel confrontation had gone viral on social media, shared thousands of times with commentary that ranged from sympathetic to brutal. Someone had created a meme featuring Evan's panicked expression with the caption, "When you realize your side chick isn't worth losing everything," which had been shared across multiple platforms. But the real damage had come from the systematic exposure of their deception. Lydia and I had carefully leaked information about the scope of their affair, the financial manipulation, the elaborate lies, the cruel way they'd discussed their spouses in private emails. Public opinion had turned decisively against them. Phase 3 was still ongoing, but the results were already clear. The divorce proceedings had left both Evan and Corinne with minimal assets and maximum debt. Evan's attempts to hide money had backfired spectacularly when forensic accountants uncovered his financial misconduct. Corinne's claims of emotional abuse had crumbled under the weight of evidence showing her own manipulative behavior. My phone rang. Derek's voice carried the satisfaction of a lawyer who'd just won a particularly challenging case. "It's over, Preston. Corinne signed the final papers this morning. You keep the house, the cars, the investment accounts, everything. She gets her personal belongings and enough money to rent a studio apartment. And Evan? Lydia's divorce was finalized yesterday. He's living in a one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop and working as a night security guard. Turns out corporate executives with ethics violations on their record have limited employment options. I ended the call and walked back to my car, where Lydia was waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a satisfied expression. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, handing me a cup. "I'm thinking about justice versus revenge. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't sure there was a difference. And now? Now I think justice is what happens when revenge is executed perfectly." Lydia laughed, the sound carrying genuine warmth for the first time since I'd met her. "You know, Preston, I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening." "My company is looking for a new IT director, someone with technical skills, strategic thinking, and the ability to handle complex problems under pressure, someone who's proven they can execute detailed plans flawlessly." "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career. Triple your current salary, stock options, and the chance to work with people who appreciate competence over politics." I considered the offer while watching the demolition crew attach cables to the motel's support beams. In a few hours, the building would be rubble, its history erased as completely as if it had never existed. "What about Corinne and Evan? Won't it be awkward if we're working together?" "Corinne moved to Phoenix last week. Apparently, she has a cousin there who offered her a job in retail management. Evan's staying in Chicago, but his new position doesn't involve much interaction with corporate executives." "Night security guard?" "Night security guard at a warehouse in the suburbs. 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, no benefits. It's amazing how quickly someone's professional prospects can disappear when their reputation is destroyed." My phone buzzed with a text from Frank. "Jim's having a celebration party tonight. Victory party for the new heavyweight champion of divorce court. You coming?" I showed the message to Lydia, who smiled. "Frank's got a point. We should celebrate." "What exactly are we celebrating?" "The fact that we turned the worst thing that ever happened to us into the best thing that ever happened to us. The fact that we refused to be victims. The fact that we proved that smart, determined people can overcome any betrayal if they're willing to fight back strategically." The demolition crew signaled for bystanders to move back. I started my car and pulled out of the parking lot, Lydia following in her BMW. In the rearview mirror, I watched the Sunset Motel collapse in a cloud of dust and debris, its neon sign flickering once before, going dark forever. 3 hours later, Frank's gym was packed with boxers, trainers, and friends celebrating what Frank had dubbed the most satisfying victory in the history of personal combat. The story of my divorce had become legendary in our circle, a cautionary tale about the consequences of underestimating quiet, methodical people. "Speech," someone called out as Frank handed me a beer. "No speeches," I said, "but I will say this. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let other people's choices define your future." Lydia raised her own beer. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed. As the party continued around us, I reflected on the journey from discovery to destruction to renewal. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a betrayed husband living in ignorance. Tonight, I was a free man with a new career, new allies, and a hard-earned understanding of my own capabilities. My phone buzzed with one final message of the evening. Unknown number, but I recognized the writing style immediately. "Preston, I know you'll probably delete this, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I made terrible choices and hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I hope someday you can forgive me. Corinne." I showed the message to Lydia, who read it and shook her head. "Still trying to manipulate you, even from Phoenix." "Probably," I said, deleting the message without responding. "But it doesn't matter anymore. She's not my problem to solve." "What is your problem to solve?" I looked around the gym, taking in the faces of people who'd supported me through the worst period of my life, then at Lydia, who'd proven that the best partnerships are forged in the fire of shared adversity. "Figuring out what to do with the rest of my life," I said. "Building something better than what I lost. Making sure I never again mistake someone's presence in my life for their value to my life." "That sounds like a good problem to have." "The best kind of problem. The kind you choose for yourself instead of having it chosen for you." Frank approached us, his weathered face creased in a grin. "Preston, you know what the difference is between a boxer and a fighter? Tell me." "A boxer follows rules, tries to win points, hopes the judges see things his way. A fighter does whatever it takes to walk out of the ring standing up." "And? You, my friend, are a fighter. You proved that these past few weeks. You took everything they threw at you and threw it back twice as hard. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, I found myself standing alone in Frank's office, looking at a photo on his wall. It showed him after his last professional fight, battered and bloodied but victorious, his arms raised in triumph. "That's from my final bout," Frank said, joining me in the office. "Lost by split decision, but I'd never been prouder of a performance. You know why? Why? Because I got knocked down in the third round, and everyone thought I was finished. My corner wanted to throw in the towel. The crowd was already heading for the exits. But I got back up, and I fought the best 3 rounds of my career. What's the point? The point is that sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to discover everything you're actually capable of. Sometimes getting knocked down is the best thing that can happen to you." I understood what he meant. 3 weeks ago, I'd thought my life was over. Tonight, I knew it was just beginning. Lydia and I walked out to the parking lot together, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain shower. "Preston," she said, stopping beside her car, "I want you to know that working with you these past few weeks has been educational." Educational? I've been in business for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone execute a plan with such precision and patience. You have a gift for strategic thinking. I had good motivation. No, it's more than that. You have the ability to see patterns, anticipate consequences, and adapt your strategy based on changing circumstances. Those are rare skills. Rare enough to justify tripling my salary? Rare enough to justify making you a partner in my consulting firm if you're interested. I considered the offer. A week ago, I'd been a mid-level IT manager in a failing marriage. Tonight, I was being offered a partnership in one of Chicago's most successful business consulting firms. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. The offer isn't going anywhere. As Lydia drove away, I stood alone in the parking lot, feeling the cool night air and listening to the distant sounds of the city. My phone was silent. No desperate texts from Corinne, no manipulative messages from mutual friends trying to broker reconciliation, no drama requiring my immediate attention. For the first time in months, my life belonged entirely to me. I drove home through empty suburban streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, past the gas station where I'd bought flowers for Corinne just a month ago, past the restaurant where we'd celebrated our last anniversary in ignorant bliss. None of it hurt anymore. The places that had once been landmarks of my marriage were now just buildings, no more significant than any other structures in the landscape of my new life. At home, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back deck, looking up at stars that seemed brighter than they had in years. Tomorrow, I would start my new job. Next week, I would sign the final divorce papers. Next month, I would begin the process of building a life based on truth rather than illusion. But tonight, I would simply sit in the darkness and appreciate the silence, the blessed, perfect silence of a life finally free from lies. The last text of the evening came from Derek. "Saw the news about your new job. Proud of you, cousin. You turned disaster into triumph." I typed back, "Thanks for everything. Couldn't have done it without you." Yes, you could have. You just would have taken longer and made more mistakes. Sleep well, Preston. You earned it. I finished my drink and went inside, locking the door behind me. As I climbed the stairs to a bedroom that was finally completely mine, I reflected on Frank's words about fighters versus boxers. For 8 years, I'd been a boxer, following the rules, trying to win points, hoping the judges would see things my way. For 3 weeks, I'd been a fighter, doing whatever it took to walk out of the ring standing up. Tomorrow, I would be something new entirely, a man who'd learned the difference between the two and chosen his battles accordingly. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., closed my eyes, and slept the dreamless sleep of someone who'd finally stopped running from the truth and started using